Back to our channel. So today we are going to start part 4 for our full Python full course, beginners to expert. And today we are going to learn about the object oriented programming in Python, and we see some other topics which is quite required to work in the real world. So let's shall start it. So if you know about, if you don't know about this Jupyter notebook, then please go the part 1 where I have described what is a Jupyter and how we can install the IDs for Python to work on it. I have given the link for in the description. So let's start with the object oriented programming. So in Python there are, when we talk about object oriented programming, we mostly heard two words frequently. One is a class and another is a object. So let's uh, learn, understand what is a class, and then we'll go forward. So basically class is a user defined blueprint, or you can say it's a prototype from which objects are created. So let me give a very simple example. When an architect uh, when architect or engineer build any structure, any building or any house, okay, so they follow a blueprint. They design it, they print it on a paper which they call as a blueprint, and by using that blueprint they uh, create the entire structure of a house or a building. So similar way, in the class have a blueprint which used by the objects to define and do the other things. Okay, so if I talk about, we'll go in the more detail. So before that we have to understand few things, some points on the Python class. So these are the points. I'm going to write it down over here. Classes are created by keyword. So whenever we are going to create a class, we are going to use this keyword class. I have explained keywords in my part 1 video, where I have shown you the keywords which Python used and assigned as a keyword in the programming language. Okay, so the second point which we always need to remember about the attributes. Okay, so this is the attributes about the variables which belongs to class. We will go in depth later on. And attributes always public and accessed using dot operator. We'll see the example in a while. Okay, so let's take an example of defining a class. Okay, let me take a simple example. So basically I'm going to adjust a class. My class name is a dog. Okay, so I am going to use my keyword class dog and pass. So in this form I can use define the class. Now in this example you have seen that I have used the class keyword, which actually creating a my class and followed by the name of my class. Okay, now let's talk about the class object. What is a class object? Okay, object is an instance of a class. Okay, what does that mean? See, a class is like a blueprint, while an instant is a copy of the class with the actual values. Like I give an example of a building. I have the building is a I have a building blueprint which is on paper, but the building which has been created by using that blueprint is the actual, that is the actual value. Okay, all the things in the building, it's which is defined in the your blueprint, the same way in a class we define, and that instance, a copy of the class or the object is used, right? So let's take an example of that. So there are basically three things which we always remember when we work on the object. One is a state. state, second is behavior, and third is identity. Okay, so what exactly it is, right? Or you can say state as a attribute, or you can say as a property, kind of. Okay, behavior, you can say this is in terminology of the programming language methods. Identity, unique identifier. Uh, so basically, so let's take example of class dog which we are talking about. So what is the identity? So if there is a dog, so what would be the identity of that dog? Definitely it's the name of the dog. So this would be the identity of that dog. If I talk about the properties or attribute of that, of any of a dog, right? So what it be? The breed, what is the breed of the dog, age of the dog, color of the dog, okay, height of the dog. So these are the properties, these are the attributes. And the behavior is basically what a dog do: bark, sleep, eat, okay. So these are the behavior of that dog. So these are the three things. So when we talk about, when we this is we are taking an example of a real world, but when we talk about in our programming language, how is going to be work, let's see on this. Okay, so let me take an example. Let me take an example over here. So this is my example. So where what I'm doing over here, I have a class dog over here. I have a attribute like it's a mammal attribute, another attribute is a dog. Now I have just created a simple method which is called def fun. Okay, and I'm printing it self dot attribute 1, attribute 2, and over here this is my object instantiation. So what I am doing over here, I have created an object reference of dog class. Okay, now by using this object I can access the function of dog class and the attributes, right? Attributes and the methods, or this is kind of a behavior of that, right? So let's run this and we'll see the result. So you can see it's printing this. Now what is a self? you know uh, we'll going to study about the self, what exactly the self is. Okay, so basically the self, you know when we talk about the self, it's a class method must have an extra first parameter in the method definition. Remember that class methods must have an extra first parameter in the method definition, and we do not give a value for the this parameter when we call the method in the Python, right? So remember that. So there always a by default one parameter in the method definition, and we are never giving the values to that, right? The second thing which we remember to the self, we have a method that takes no arguments, then we still have to have one argument. So if I don't have any parameter, then still I have a one argument. And or you can understand in a way, it's similar like a pointer in C++ and the reference in a Java. Okay, so let's go in a deep dive. So when I say, let's suppose I have a method, calling a method which is my object. Let's take an example. This is my object dot method, and I am passing the arguments over here, argument 1 and argument 2. This is my method. This is automatically convert in what? Let me show you. It will convert it my class. This is my class name dot method, the method which I have defined, and my object argument 1 and argument 2. Okay, so this is the all spatial self is about, right? Now let's talk about one method which we called init. Let me write it down over here. So init method. So what is that? So this init method is a simple similar to constructor in C++ and Java. So Python also work on the constructors. So constructors are used to initialize the object's state. Like method, a constructor also contains a collection of statements that are executed at the time of object creation. It runs as soon as an object of a class is instantiated. The method is useful to do any initialization you want to do with your object. Okay, let's take an example of this. Okay, let me write down. So let's suppose I have a class called person, right? And in that, what we are going to do, we're going to define the constructor and the method, and we create an object, and we will call it, we'll call the function and see how the constructor will work, right? So this is the function, this is the one. So when I'll run it, so what it will do, it will give me, the first thing is, it will, this is my initial method. So when I instantiate my object, it will call this, the self, and the name, it will provide the name and hi. So it will pass over here as a self dot name, because this name is coming from my method itself. So let's run it. So you can see this, right? So now this another part is, which we have talked about, the instances variables. So what is the instances variable, right? So instance variable are for data or unique to each instance, and the class variables are for attributes and method shared by all instances of the class. So when I say this is my instance variable, that means I have created a variable, which belongs to a specific class, and the methods or the objects which has been, created or belongs to that class, they can access my variables, for a data or other work itself, right? So how this is going to be in the Python, let's take an example. I'm going to create a class called dog over here. This is my class. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to create, this is my class variable. Let me write it down over here, so this will give you a hint what we are doing. Class variable, this is my class variable. I am giving a value to this. This is the value which I have given. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a constructor, right? So this is how, this is a double under, this is a not single underscore, this is a double underscore, remember that. Create this. Now I have to provide a parameters, right? So for the first parameter would be the self, the second I'm going to give a breed, and another one I'm going to give color. This is what I have created. Now what I need to do, I have to define the values, like we do in other programming languages. Okay, so self dot breed equal to, let's say, breed, this is what I have giving. Second, self dot color, right? So this is what I have given. Now what I need to do, I need to create a object of dog class. Okay, so let me write it down, object of dog class, right? So let's take an example, name of Roger. This is, I am giving a name, reference of my class dog, and now I have to provide the values, right? So let's say Doberman, and this would be brown. Now I'll take another name of another object, again same dog. Let me say, now husky, and I say color would be gray, right? So this is two objects I have created. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to print these, right? These things. So let's say print, this is the just in a statement I'm writing over here, project details. Let's say now I'm going to print, okay, Roger is a, right, and Roger dot breed. This is what I have given. Let me copy this and I'll paste it over here. Now the color, right, and or I can say this is not in this form. Let me do this. Roger, there's another, animal, right? We have animal. This is the variable. This is the constructor we are using, right? So this is what I have written. Now let's run this. So far what I have done, let's run it. So you can see the dog, and it's giving me a Roger animal. This is my instance variable which I can access through the object of this class, the breed, Roger dot breed. This is how I'm going to call my constructor, right? So this is how can I'm going to use it. So same I can write I can write for my another object and do the same thing, right? So let's take another example for defining an instance variable using the normal method. Okay, this is what, and let's take another example, and let me copy this and I'll show you. So this is my another example. Okay, now this is what we are doing. We are creating an instance variable inside the method. Okay, so you can see this is my class. Okay, this is my class variable, and this is, you can see, this is init self breed. This is what we have, the constructor, right, passing the self and breed instance variable. Now this is defining the set color. So this is my instance, adding instance variable over here. This is getting the instance variable and now calling it. So you can see it's giving me get color over here. So I have a constructor where I'm defining a breed. I have a func method which I'm adding an instance variable over here, then going to instance this. This is the same getter and setter. If you can see, if you work on the Java, you can similarize with the getter and setter. So this is how we are going to use this. Now let's take talk about the constructor. Now we'll go and study about the each and everything, and the other part of the object oriented programming. So let's talk about the constructor. What is the constructors, right? See, constructors are generally used for instantiating an object. The task of constructor is to initialize to the data members of the class when an object of the class is created. Okay, so let's take an example. So let me write it down. Syntax, this is the double underscore init double underscore and giving the self over here, right? So this is, and I'm just writing over here, and body of the constructor, right? Now types of constructor, right? So the first one is default, the second one is parameterized. Remember that. So these are the two methods, two types of constructor. Default one where we are not passing any values, and the parameterized when we are passing values into our constructor. Like in above example you have seen, we are passing, you can see that we are passing the value. This is my parameterize, right? This is the parameterize. So let's take example of the first example. We'll take of a simple one, right? The default constructor. So let me write it down. Default constructor. Default constructor. So let the first thing, I need to create a class. So I am going to create a class over here. So this is my class which I have created, right? So in this class, what I need to do, I am going to create a constructor, and in this I'm not going to pass, but as we learn that in Python we have a default parameter which we call as a self. So this is what I am writing. Now what I'm going to print is, let's say self dot att equal to right. This is what I have done. Now I'm going to create a method for printing my data member, right? So I'm going to create a method which I am calling as a print underscore att self, right? Now I'm writing print self dot att over here. This is the function which I have created. Now what I need to do, I have to create an object equal to, for this which class, for my class itself, right? Creating an object of this class. So my class is automation tips tricks, right? And now what I'm going to do, I'm calling the instance method of my class. So in that case I have created object using a dot operator and calling it print dot print underscore att, right? So this is how I have written my function over here. So let's run it and see. Okay, it's saying invalid instance over here. Yeah, because I forget about the semicolon, right? So let's run it. Okay, it's saying name automation tricks not defined. Let me see how is that. Let me copy it this and put it over here. Yeah, there's some mistake in written over here, so now you can see. Okay, so this is what is you can see how I have created one constructor, created instance method and calling that method, and in this method what I am passing the value from my constructor itself. So this is how we are going to use the default constructor. Now the another example we'll take. So remember that there's a lot of things which always when you do a programming, and using a Jupyter notebook to work on it, you remember the indent part. If there's any problem, you will get the problems, okay, when you're going to run it, like, so always remember that part. Now let's take example of parameterize. This is the parameterize constructor. Okay, so in this case what we are going to do, let's take some calculation. So my keyword class, this is my class name. Now what I'm going to create, I'm going to create my variables. These my instance variables, right? So this is you. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create and initializing it, right? This is what I have done. Now what I have to do, I have to create para constructor, right? Now I'm so def underscore double underscore init double underscore, and now what I'm going to give is self and f comma s. This is the parameters which I'm passing it. Now let's take an example. What is the self dot first equal to f and self dot second s. This is how we done. Now let's create another example, method def display, let's say display, and there is no parameter, so we have to give like the self, right? Now let's say print, I'm going to print it first number, right? And str string, this is my also keyword, self dot first, right? Let me copy this. Okay. Now over here I write down the second, and I say print right on addition and I would say plus str and self dot answer, right? This is what I have done. Okay, right? This is the method I have created. Now I need to create another method for a calculation. So def clc self, now self dot answer equal to self dot first and plus self dot second, right? This is how we done it, right? So I have a method which going to be displayed it, right? Another one, the method which going to calculate. Now I have to create object. Let me create the object equal to which class, my class, right? This is the object I have created, right? And because this is a parameterized, so I am going to pass the values, let's say 200 and 300. So this is the value I have passed. Now what I'm going to do, I'm calling my method, which is, this is the method which I have run, right? And the second method which I have to call to display it, right? So display I have created, right? So what it is going to do, I have parameterized it. So my constructor will run, so it will pass the values of 200, 300 for f and s, and when this will run, so it will set the value for first and the second variable as a 200 and 300, and when I'm going to calculate this, so it will calculate and give the self dot answer as a addition of these two numbers, and we're going to use the method display for this, right? Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, right? So this is how we are going to run it. So let's run it. So you can see first number, second number, addition. So in this way we use constructor either in a default way, or we use it into our parameterized way, right? Now there is a one uh, called as a destructors in Python. So let's take example of the destructor also. What exactly the destructor is? Let me write it down over here. Python. So destructors are called when an object gets destroyed. In Python, destructors are not needed as much as needed in C++. Remember that, right? We are not as much as needed like we required in a C++. Python has a garbage collector for that handles memory management automatically. But still, we see how the destructor method used in a Python. Okay, so this is how we define. Again, it's a def double underscore del double underscore, we write over here self and the body of destructor, right? This is, now let's take an example. Okay, by using a del keyword we delete to all the references of object, therefore constructor invert automatically. Okay, so let's take an example on that, right? So first I need to create a class. So this is my class I have created. Now what I have to do, I'm going to create my constructor over here. This is my constructor, and the constructor is default constructor because I'm not passing any argument into that, right? So let's print and say employee created. Okay, now let me create destructor, right? So def, this is my syntax, right? This is my syntax, and writing a self over here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm writing print over here constructor called, right, and employee deleted. Okay, so this is what I have created. Okay, now what I need to do, I have to create an object because when we use the class we have to access the class attributes and behavior, we or the the prop instance variable methods written, we have to create an object. So this is my object employee, sorry, yeah, this is, and what I'm going to do is saying del object, right? This is another keyword. This is what I'm going to do it, right? So let's run it and we'll see the output. Okay, there is a problem in syntax like this. Okay, sorry, we have to run it. There is again some problem into that. Yeah, these are the problems. Like you can see the employee created, right? Right. So this is how we are going to do it. Remember that. Now let's take another example for the delete. In this example, we are, you know, remember one thing which you need to remember about the destructors. The destructors always called after the program ended. Okay, or when all the references to the object are deleted. Take, okay, and when the reference count becomes 0. Remember that. So let's take another example of this. Okay, we'll, and you might be understand much more clarity into that. So I'm going to write it over here. This is one of the program. Okay, and we'll run it and we'll see. So now what exactly has been done? This is my constructor which initializing employee created, right? This is my destructor which I am calling it. Okay, now this is the create object, where I'm just creating my object over here and returning the object. Now this is the print which I am going to print it over here. Now what I have done, I have created my object of create object. Okay, this is how we can use it. Okay, and then writing a print program. And so what it will do, the first of all, it's going to run this, because till now my object is not instantiated, and unless and until my object doesn't instantiated, my constructor will not call. So after that, this one, the object has been created. So it will, what it will do, I'm calling this method as an object. So employee created, you can see this is employee created, because once this has been, the object has been created, what is going to do, it will initialize my constructor. There is a, I'm going to print the employee created, that's why the employee created written over here. The next line is a function end, which has been written over here, and the program and the last one. So this is how we're going to use in this, right? Okay, so this is all about the destructor. Now there is a second most important concept in the object oriented programming, which we called as a inheritance in Python. Inheritance, right? So let's see how the inheritance work in the Python itself. So going before that, I would like, I would like to share that if you like our videos to for motivate our channel, just subscribe our button, subscribe button, and share with your friends and family, so they can also learn about the automation and the programming languages. Now, let's take an example. Let's see and understand about the inheritance and the how inheritance used in the Python. So, inheritance is basically a capability of class to derive or inherit the properties from another class, right? So, for example, you can understand that a son have inherit the property or the assets belongs to his or her father. Okay, his father. So that is called the inherit, right? That's the same word, the inheritance, which we generally use in our real world. But how these inheritance is used when we do object oriented programming, let's see it. Okay, so basically, what is the use of inheritance? So it's provide reusability of a code, so we don't have to write the same code again and again. Also, it allows us to add more features to a class without modifying it, right? And another benefit of using inheritance is tra- transitive is in a nature, which means that if a class B inherits from a class from class A, then all the subclasses of B would be automatically inherit from a class A. That means a grandson inherits his father, and the father inherits his father. That means a grandson inherits all the properties from the grandfather. So this is giving an example to understand in more clarity in our real world, in our real life, right? So now let's take an example of using a Python, right? In how we are going to use in the Python. Okay, so let me create a one program for the demonstrate the inheritance. Okay, so I'm going to create it. Let me say my class name is, okay, let me write it down over here. Class person. I'm saying object, right? Now defining a constructor. This is the constructor, I'm defining it. Now I'm going to give the value self dot name equal to name, right? Another function which I'm going to write, kind of a setting getter and setter. So def get name, and what I'm going to do, self, writing over here, right, and saying return self dot name, right. Now what I'm going to, I have to write another method, to check if the person is an employee or not. So for that I'm writing a method is employee, and what I'm going to pass, nothing into that. So this is how we are going to do that. So return false. This is how I'm going to use it, right. So this is the one class I have written as a person. Okay, now let's write a subclass, or you could say the inherited class. So let's class, and it would be my employee, and I'm passing the parameter the person over here. Okay, in this I'm going to create a method called def is employee, right, and say return true. Sorry, always remember that programming language is a case sensitive, so remember that. See, if I write down in this way and in this way, you can see the difference, right. So this is how we have done, right. So now what I'm going to do, I need to create an object. So let's employ, and what I'm going to do, person, and writing att1. Okay, what I have done, I have created object of a person class. Now let's print employee dot, it will use get name, right, and employee dot is employee. These are the two methods which you have written over here, right. These are the methods which we have written. Now what I'm going to do, I employee equal to employee, and rating 882. Okay, let me put it over here, 882, and same what I'm going to do, print employee dot get name, comma, employee dot is employee, right. This is how we are going to do. Now let's run it. Again, problem is somewhere problem in it, right. Yep. Okay, so okay, the name object is not defined, right. So that's somewhere I done a mistake. Okay, so let me correct it. Yeah, this is how we are going to define it. So let's run it again. Okay, person takes no argument. Why it's saying that person not take any argument? Let me check. Let me check why it's not doing this. On the line number of employee, it should take an example of this. It's saying employee is employee. Wait a minute, let me check it. Why it's not taking an example of this? Get name is employee, return false. This is right. Employee, we have created person class over here. Okay, just a moment. Where I've written. So let me copy this and run it. Copy and paste, and we'll run it again. Yeah. So now you can see what exactly happened over here. When I created a object of a person class, it's called a get name from the person and is employee from the person, the method which you have written. And when I click create a object employee, emp from the employee class, we is giving me a value from the employee class method, and get name which is from the person class, because the employee is inherit from the person. Okay, so this is how we get it. So let's take another example, okay, to understand how parents constructor are called. Okay, so let me copy this example over here, right? So let me copy this, we understand what exactly it is. So this is my parent class. Let me yeah. So this is my parent class, and this is my constructor where I'm passing the number and the ID number. This is how the ID number and name I have given. My method, which is another method, is a self, which going to print the name and the ID number. Now this is my child class. Okay, child class, and the inherit from person, right? Now over here I have created the constructor of my child class. I'm passing name, ID, salary, post, cell. Okay, so this is how I'm passing it. Now invoking the init class of the parent class, how it's going to be initiate. So this is the way I'm going to call the constructor of my parent class. So now what I'm going to do, I'm creating a method called object called a of the employee class, which is a child class, passing the values, passing all the values, because this is my constructor. So I have to pass the values, name, ID number, salary, manager, right? So this is how I'm going to do that. Now I'm calling a function of the person class using its instance, right? An instance which I am calling it display. This is my method, and this method is where it is written. It's written into my parent class. Okay, so let's say, so when I call this, so what exactly is it done? It's setting the value of a name and ID number, which I'm passing it over here. And let's run this example and we'll see what is the result. So it's what is giving me name and the ID number, which we have defined in this particular method. So this is how the parent constructors are called. Okay, so let's take another example, for how the inheritance we can use it when, you know if there is any kind of demonstrated error, if we forget to invoke the constructor of the parent. Okay, remember that. So let's take an example of this. So I'm going to create a class a. This is my class I have created, writing a method over here, which is my constructor, right? This is my constructor. Now what I'm writing, and equal to, I would say, Shamsher, and self dot name equal to, and if you know how I have written over here, you can go to my the part 2 video where I have defined how the functions work in the Python, and how many ways we can use the functions by passing arguments in a different way into the function. So go over, look into the part 2, which the description and the link I have mentioned in the description box. So this is how I have given it. Let me take some space, so it must be much clear. Now what I am going to do, I have to create another class. This is my class B, which is a child of class A. This is how we define always. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to create a constructor for my class, and I'm writing self and role, right? This is what I am defining it. So let's say self, I'm writing self role and equal to role. This is how I have defined it, right? Now the next step is creating object. So let me create object equal to b, and what I'm passing is some value over here. And let's say I need to run it print obj dot name, right? This is how I'm going to run it. So now let's run it and we'll see the output of this. So okay, there are some mistake into that, and the mistake is very common mistake. This is the mistake, right? So now run it. So you can see this is the attribute error. B object has no attribute name, right? So this is how we are, you know uh, demonstrating the error when we when we are forgot to invoke my parent constructor, like we have seen in our the previous one, right? This is how it's work. Okay, and if I want to, I have to call my constructor like the way I have called over here, right? And then we can work on it, right? So now this is what we understand about the inheritance. Now let's talk about the different type of the inheritance. So there's a inheritance called a single inheritance and the multiple inheritance. To understand, we'll see the example. So first let's understand what is the single inheritance. So when a child class inherits from one parent class, it's called a single inheritance. We have seen an example above. All are the single inheritance example, right? The second one is the multiple inheritance. So when a child class inherits from a multiple parents classes, it's called multiple inheritance. Unlike Java and C++, Python supports multiple inheritance. Remember this. We specify all parent classes as a comma separated list in the bracket. Okay, so let's take an example of multiple, right? So let me write down a method over here for the inheritance. So first I'm going to create a class, a common name of class base. I'm saying object over here. Give me some space and writing this, right? Now I'm writing a constructor and self. Now I'm just saying self dot str1 equal to the value going to give att1. This is the value I have given. Print the class name I'm going to write, which is a base, right? This is the base one I have written. Okay, now I am going to create another class. Let me copy this, right? So I need to create another class. So let me change the name of this class as base one over here. Okay, and I'll give the name base two over here. Over here I write down base two. Okay, and write it down over here. This is what I'm doing. I'm just creating the classes and the constructor for these classes, right? So this is what I have done. Now I am going to create another class which I'll call derived and base 1 comma base 2. So this is how I'm going to define my multiple inheritance. Now for this, now I'm going to define init self and going to say self, and this is what I have done. And now I'm going to call my function. So let's say base 1 dot init self. This is base for base 2, right? This is base 2, and going to print derived, right? and writing over print strs dot. Okay, so this is the method which I have created. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an object equal to derived and calling object dot print strs, right? This is the method which I'm going. Let me copy this so there would be no mistake. So this is our print and this is the function which I am calling it. Okay, so now let's run this. So again some problem coming over here. Let me see what is the problem. Derived object has no attribute string to str2, right? So this is the problem which I am getting it. Okay, let me see. Self str2 we have defined over here into this and printing the base 2. Derived object has no attribute. And let me see what exactly it is. Okay, let me check this. In it self.str881 which we have written, this is fine. We have defined the base object to, we have defined base 2 class, we have defined base 1 and base 2. We have defined into this base 2. This is the self we have defined. Derives str1 as self str2. It's saying str2 is not part of this. Let me check and define print str. That is the problem we are getting it. Okay, so let me run this. Derived. Let me copy where. Okay, so let me copy this because somehow there's a problem coming into this. Okay, yeah. So there's some problem into writing the form itself. So this is what I have done. Okay, so let's run it and see. You can see the base 1, base 2, derived 88 or 81. So we have called class 1, class 2 into this. So this is how we are going to achieve the multiple inheritance. So there is another called a multi-level inheritance. Okay, so when we have a child and a grandchild relationship. Okay, so how that we can see that. Okay, so let me take that example. So I'm just copying this from over here and writing over here. So you see, let me explain you what exactly this is. So this is my base class, this is my constructor which I have written. This is the constructor, this is the get name, getter to get the value. This is my child which is the child which is child of the base class. Okay, and this is the constructor of this class. The another is the grandchild which is a child of a child. Okay, and the constructor is written over here. So now what I have done, I have created one code object of the grandchild, passing the values over here, ATD 23. This is how we are going to, now we are going to get the get name which is written over here in my grandparent grandparent class, right? Get age, this age is written into my parent class, and the get address which is basically written over in my class, right? So this is how we are going to run it. Let's run and see the results. So you can see this is how I'm going to get the result. So this is how we handle the multi-level inheritance into the Python itself. Okay, so now we have gone through, there's some others which we can discuss, like hierarchical inheritance. More than one derived class are created from a single class. Another one is a hybrid inheritance. This forms combine more than one form of inheritance. Basically it's a blend of more than one type of inheritance. Remember that about, we don't always want the instance variable of the parents class to be inherited by the child class, right? So what we do, we create the private member of parent class, right? So this is how we going to make sure that the parent class variable, which is private for parent class, will not can be accessible through the child class. Now the we let's move for another topic of the inheritance which we are going to study, okay, and that is called a polymorphism. Encapsulation we understand, then we'll see the polymorphism. So basically what is a polymorphism, sorry, encapsulation. Encapsulation is one of the fundamental concept of object oriented programming. It describes the idea of wrapping data and the methods that work on data within a unit, within a one unit. Remember this. This put restrictions on accessing variables and methods directly and can prevent the accidental modification of data, right? So that is why a fundamental concept of oops, okay, to prevent accidental changes in an object's variable can only be changed by an object's method. Those types of variables known as private variable, right? Let's take an example of this, how we are going to do. So first understand about the protected members. So protected members are those members of the class that cannot be accessed outside the class but can be accessed from within the class and its subclasses. See, there are the three types. One is a public, second is a private, and the third is a protected. So protected is basically outside the class, nobody can use it, but the inherit class can use the protected members of the parent class, right? And you know for the convention of prefixing the name of the member by a single underscore. So remember that. We'll see the example how we going to use the protected members, right? After that, the private members. What is the private member? So private members are similar to protected members. The difference is that the class member declared private should neither be accessed outside the class nor by any base class. In Python, there is no existence of private instance variable that cannot be accessed accepted except inside a class. So however, to define a private member, prefix the member name with double underscore, okay. So this is the example we are going to say it, okay. So let's take an example of the protected one, right? How we are going to use protected members. So let me copy the example over here, right? So what I'm going to do is, so this is my member. So let's understand this. This is my class which I have, this is my base class, okay. Now what I have done, when I use underscore, it will make it as a protected member. This is my derived class. This is calling constructor of base class, right? This is the object 1 of the derived class. This is the object 2 of my base class. Now what I am going to do, I am going to call my protected member over here, right? So let's run it. Base object has no attribute, right? So let's see where we have done strong thing into that. Base object has no attribute, we have written over here. Self a equal to 2 we have written, right? Protected member we have written, that is fine. Okay, it's giving me a, but it's somehow giving me an error that base object has no attribute called as a. So this is how we going to use my protected member, right? let's take another example of the private member. Let me write it down. So this is, you can see the outside object, we cannot use the protected member, right? So let's take another example of private. I'm going to create a class called base over here, and defining my object. See, I have used a double underscore. Now what I'm going to do, using a derived class which is child of base class, defining my constructor. Now calling base dot now finding calling now what I'm going to do, I'm going to derive class object derived right objects of my base class, print object dot a. This is what I have defined. Okay, right? So this is, I'm going to run it and we see the result. Now you can see this is the private member. So now this is how we are going to raise an at, using a private uh, private member, right? This is how it can be done. So if I want to see, let me show you something or also. So I have created object 1 equal to derived, right? This is how I'm going to create it. So what I have done, I have called the object 1, right? And let's say print object 1 dot, right? Sorry. Yeah, and we'll see. See, derived has no attribute derived underscore c. So this is how we use the pri private members into that, right? So next topic which we are going to cover is the polymorphism, how the polymorphism work in. Okay, so let's talk about the polymorphism. So first understand what is the polymorphism. So polymorphism is, means like the, it's simply derived from a word itself. Polymorphism means having many forms. Like in programming, polymorphism means the same function name but different signature being used for a different type, right? So let's take an example of a polymorphism, how this is going to be work. So let me say I'm writing print. It's a very simple example you have already seen. Okay, so let me say length of automation. Okay, this is, and let's say print length and 20 30. This is the one. Now let's run it. 10 and 3, you can see that. So the for the function name over here is same, right? But we are passing a string over here, we are passing the error over here. So this is how the polymorph is actually working, right? So let's understand polymorphs within the class method, how it's work in the polymorphism is class work, right? So let me take an example of this. Okay, and we'll see how the polymorphism works in the class itself. So let me copy this over here. So this is my method and I'm going to run it. So you can see that. So you can see the capital over here. This is one of my method, language, but the class is India, USA for this. So when I click on when I create a object of India class and the US class, it, and run the for loop for each country, for India and US. So you can see the country dot capital, country dot language, and country dot type. So it will run for object India, right, first, and then for object USA. So this is how the polymorphism work into the object oriented programming. So now you know understand the polymorphism with inheritance. Okay, so most of you have heard of the word as a method overriding, right? And so what is the method overriding? Let's talk about this. Okay, so in Python, polymorphism is define methods in the child class that have the same name as the method in parent class. So inheritance, the child class inherit the method from the parents class. However, it is possible to modify a method in a child class that it has inherited from the parent class. This is particularly used in cases where the method inherited from the parent class doesn't quite fit the child class. In such cases, we re-implement the method in the child class. The process of re-implementing a method in the child class is known as the method overriding. Okay, so we'll see the example of method overriding. What is the method overriding example it is, right? So let's say class A have some method called A, and class B have again method called A. But in that case, but it's class A method is not quite suit for class B. So what we are going to do, we going to create a method in class B with the same name called a method A into class B, okay, which fulfill the requirement of a class B, and that is known as a method inheritance, right? So let's take example. See, I'm copying all these the program over here, so it will take some time and my video won't be get longer. I know the video is getting longer, but to cover all the topics in details, the videos are going to be much longer in that case, right? So let's talk about, so this is my class bird, these my function method intro, print, sparrow, right, this one. But the class sparrow is the child of class bird, and the method flight is a method overriding. You can see that, okay, in each class. So when I run it, expected indent block over here in def, yeah, it's giving this problem. Let's run it. Def intro. So yeah, inconsistent use of tabs, spaces, and indentation. So let's. So that is the problem. We face it whenever we work. Let me correct these things. Right. Yeah. So now this is so basically the most important understanding part is that my parent class have this flight method, but my child class also have the same method. So this is how we use it. So when I create object from my child class, what it will do, it will call this particular method. So let me do that. Now you can see that. So when I say object is sparrow dot flight, so it will call the function which is written into the sparrow, not the function which is written in the parent class. So this is how we're going to implement our method overriding. So let's take another example how the polymorphism work within with a function and object. So it's also possible to create a function that can take any object, allowing for a polymorphism. So the example which we are talking about, we create a function called function which will take an object which we will name give as an object. Through we are using the name object instantiation object will be able to call into this function. Okay, so let's go and take this example. So you can see I have called the obj in this particular function. This is the function I have created. Now in function I am calling the object. Let's run it. This is the function because this is I have already created this function. So that is how we are using it, right, with the object. This is how the polymorphism work with the objects. Now if I have to take the example of the function itself, okay, so we have already seen the example in the function above. Okay, so let me again take the example of how the polymorphism with work with functions. So this is the class which we have already written over here. This is the function which I am going to create, passing the object over here, and let's run the function and we'll see the results. So this is how the results come out. So this is how we can work polymorphism work with the functions and the objects. So now the next part we'll understand the static and the variable static class or static variables, right? So static variables, when we talk about, okay, to understand that, let's take an example. So all objects share class or static variables. An instance or non-static variables are different for different objects. For an example, let's take a science student to be represented by a class called science student. The class may have a static variable whose value is xyz, right, for all the object, so which we have defined on the class level. So this is how we are going to use the static variables. So let me take an example of that. For the static variable, let me show you. So basically in this, all variables which are assigned a value in the class declaration are class variables, and variables that are assigned values inside methods are inside the methods are called instance variables. So there's a two kind of variables. In a simple way we can understand the variables which we define on the class level, right, and the variables which we define inside the methods. The variables which we define in the methods called the instance variable, because till the time the method will execute, it will only be accessible within the method itself. But the variable which we define on the class declaration called a class variable, and that can be accessed through the class variable methods. So this is how the static variables will work. So There is another term which is a static method, right? What is a class method versus static method? That needs to be understood. So the class method decorator is a built in the function decorator, right? And that is an expression that gets evaluated after your function is defined. The result of this evaluation shadow your function definition. A class method receive the class and an implicit first argument, just like an instance method receive the instance. Okay, so if I take the example, syntax of this, what would be the syntax? Let me show you. So let me write down. So this is what. Just a minute. Let me finish it. Or so let's understand about the class. Few things about the class method. So class method is a method that is bound to the class and not the object of the class. Remember that a class method is a method that is bound to the class and not the object of the class. The second point need to remember, they have the access to the state of the class, as it takes a class parameter that points to the class and not the object instance. Third thing which can could be remember is it can modify a class state that would apply across all the instances of the class. For example, it can modify a class variable that will be applicable to all the instances. So let me I think I need to write down over here. Okay, so class C, this is the syntax which I am writing over here for your understanding. Class method def function cls and the function so what is the function that needs to be converted into a class method, right? And returns a class method for function. Remember that. Okay, so this is how, right? Okay, so this is all. Let me indent this now. Okay, so this is the one, right? So now let's take a talk about the another static method, right? So static method does not receive any implicit first argument. Remember that. A static method never uses. So a static method is also a method that is bound to the class and not the object of the class. Okay, remember that. A static method is also a method that is a bound to the class and not the object of the class. A static method can't access or modify the class state. But in case of class method, they can modify the class state. Remember, they are this is the difference between both of them. It is present in a class because it makes sense for the method to be present in class. Okay, so this is two things, class and class method and the static method. Let me note down the syntax of the class method. This is my class called C object. Okay, static method def argument 1, argument 2. Okay, returns a static method for function 1, right? So our object oriented programming is covered today. Okay, so in the next in the next part of the video, we are going to understand the exception handling and some other advanced topic of the Python which required to work, write a complex programs or solutions for the problem statements using a Python. If you like this, thanks for all watching this video. If you like this video, for our motivation, please do subscribe, follow and share, so we can we can always try to make a good videos for you for the learning purpose. Thank you all, thank you very much.